or should I say aloha. So I am here today with the second video in my Disney dining series. So our trip to Disney World was over a year ago now, and so I do acknowledge that a lot of the experiences that you might get if you go to these hotels, these restaurants, may be very, very different now. Things change in Disney World all the time. But what I really want these videos to be is to just give you a flavour, a taste of our experience and whether we enjoyed it and what you might be able to expect. And just basically our recommendations of whether we would book again if we were to book another trip. So our last video was all about our experiences at Cinderella's Royal Table. And if you are interested in watching that video, I will leave a link in the description below. However, today is all about the time we had breakfast at the Ohana restaurant in the Polynesian Resort. So on my last Disney holiday, which was over 20 years ago, we didn't actually get to visit any of the resorts. And so I knew when we were booking this trip that this was going to be really high on my bucket list. I wanted to go and branch out a bit from just the parks and actually see a bit more of the Disney complex, visit some of the resorts, and Ohana, based on everything I'd heard online, was really, really, really high on my list of places that I wanted to visit for reasons that we're going to get into a little bit later on. So unlike Cinderella's Royal Table, Ohana was a relatively easy reservation to get. As with the other reservations, we were able to book these up to 60 days in advance, and Ohana was relatively easy to get hold of. I had a couple of days in mind, and when I got to 60 days before that, I had a quick look online, looked at what was available. A lot of the very, very early morning slots had gone. I'm assuming that's because resort guests, etc. want to get in there, get breakfast and get gone. But there were plenty around the 9:30, 10:30 mark, which is when we were interested in going. We were staying off property, so we were going to have to travel into the resorts to get to the restaurant. And so we didn't want anything too early. And there was quite a lot of choice. We didn't have any problem booking, so that was a definite plus. In regards to accessing the resort, I'm not entirely sure if this is still the same, but when we were there, you weren't allowed to park in the hotels unless you were either a guest or you had a reservation. You were able to travel in on Disney Transport, but if you wanted to go into the car park, you had to either have a reservation or you had to be a hotel guest. As we were staying off property, we did actually book an Uber to take us from our villa, which was about 45-minute drive away from the resort. We were picked up and we were driven straight through the gates. Both the Uber driver and the staff on the gate seemed really sort of up to speed with how this whole process worked. We were let in with no problems. They did ask if we had a reservation, but they didn't actually see any proof of that. They just drove us straight through. The Uber driver dropped us directly at the door of the resort. We were able to get out and we were there, no problem at all. So let's start by talking just a little bit about the atmosphere at Ohana and the Polynesian Resort in general, because genuinely, this might be the most beautiful resort I have ever had the privilege of stepping foot into. From the moment we got out of the taxi, I was just blown away by how just visually stunning this whole place is. It genuinely felt a little bit like I was stepping out into Hawaii or any other sort of Polynesian holiday destination, and I just was blown away. There were water features, there were plant displays, there were statues. It was just, everything was designed in this most peaceful, relaxing environment. It was so beautiful. The moment we stepped foot in there, it leapt straight to the top of my list of places that I hope to stay one day. It's genuinely the most beautiful place in the world, and I was so excited to finally be there. As we walked into the foyer, we were greeted by a gentleman who insisted that me and the girls had to have some flowers. I did explain that we weren't actually hotel guests because I felt a little bit guilty, and it didn't make any difference. He was like, no, everybody has to have flowers, and so we all got a garland. And it really did just make us feel part of it. I had worried that going into the resorts, I would feel a little bit like an outsider because we weren't staying there as if we shouldn't be there, and we were interlopers into the environment, and it wasn't like that at all. You were made to feel completely welcome. I think especially nowadays, going to the resorts and just hanging around them, even if you're not staying there, is much more of a sort of a normal thing for people to do, and it felt really comfortable and I really enjoyed that. We did have to ask for help finding the restaurant because it's upstairs and it wasn't immediately obvious. Like, I had assumed it would be this really obvious big place that you would see, and I didn't know where I was going originally, but one of the cast members on one of the desks was incredibly helpful and directed us straight upstairs. And once you got up there, there's a big sign saying Ohana, you can't miss it. As with a lot of our other experiences, it was a mobile check-in, so I just got on the Disney app, told them that we were there, and within minutes, one of the staff came over to greet us and take us to our table, and our breakfast began. And I suppose the most important part of any breakfast review is the food. So the food at Ohana for breakfast anyway, I'm not sure about lunch and dinner, is a family style buffet. So you get a big platter of food brought to your table. It's specifically for your table. It's based around how many people you've booked for, and you can just help yourself to all you care to enjoy. And if there's anything that you want more of, you can ask the staff and they're more than happy to bring it out to you. So the first dishes that we were served was this lovely platter of mixed fruits, very sort of exotic looking, colourful, very fresh fruit. Some pineapple coconut bread, which was the most delicious thing I've ever eaten, and I could have consumed that by the boatload. It was absolutely beautiful. Both of the girls agreed. And then also we got some of the famous pog juice, which is, I believe, passion fruit, orange and guava juice, and it's like legendary in the resorts and in Disney World, and it is the most delicious juice I've ever had the privilege of drinking. I absolutely loved it. So just in that initial sort of opening course, I was pretty damn happy with our decision to go there. After that, they bring out the main food platter, which is this huge platter which just has everything that you could want for a breakfast. So there was sausage, there was egg, there was ham with a pineapple glaze, there were potatoes, and then as well as that you also got Stitch and Mickey waffles with syrups and stuff brought out. There was so much food. I mean, obviously I was there myself and two children, and that's what I booked for, although Freya, I believe, was an adult age, so I booked for 2 adults and 1 child, even though Freya absolutely did not have an adult's appetite. And there was far more food than we could possibly have eaten. The only thing I possibly would have wanted more of was the pineapple coconut bread, but I sort of felt a little bit guilty asking for more bread when there was so much other food I knew we weren't going to eat, so I didn't ask for any more just because I didn't want to be greedy and leave a lot of food wasted while asking for more of something else. That's the only thing that I probably would have liked a bit more of, just because it was so delicious. But all of the rest of the food was absolutely beautiful, so tasty, so fresh. The girls loved it. They were a big fan of the Stitch and Mickey waffles. I think that might have been the first of our Mickey waffles of that holiday, and I couldn't fault the food. It was so nice and just exactly what you want to start your day off. And I'm absolutely certain that if you've been with a bigger party, maybe you would have wanted to ask for a few extra bits and pieces, but we had more than enough. We didn't need any more. So the only real disappointment that we had from this experience was that way back, before anybody had heard the phrase coronavirus, when we were originally planning this holiday, the reason that Ohana had been so high on my bucket list was because breakfast was a character breakfast and you got to meet Lilo and Stitch. And this was something we were really excited about, big Lilo and Stitch fans, all of us, and I thought this would be a really, really special thing for me and the girls to do. So it was the reason that we'd originally looked into it and become interested in the whole going to this restaurant in the first place. Sadly, due to COVID, obviously most of the couch dining was scrapped, and when we visited, the Ohana character breakfast hadn't returned. So I knew that when we booked it. That wasn't a surprise. It wasn't their fault. I was well aware, but I was a little bit gutted. I kept my fingers crossed in the whole run up to the holiday that they might have changed that and brought back the character dining, and sadly they didn't. So we had just the plain buffet breakfast without any characters. Since then, they have now brought back character breakfast, and now Lilo and Stitch, you can meet them again. It's possible that that does affect the price, because I do think we paid slightly less than it's currently advertised on the website, but that was the only thing I would have changed about the entire experience, because we really wanted to meet Lilo and Stitch. So speaking of prices, how much does breakfast at Ohana cost? So obviously we visited a year ago, and I checked on my bank statements and we paid $80.96 all in. That was the cost of the 2 adults and 1 child breakfast, plus tax, plus gratuity. That equated to £61.88. So yes, pricey just for breakfast, but also a really, really nice breakfast. I have noticed now, if you look on the website, that it is now $45 per adult, $29 per child. Obviously tax and gratuity are on top of that, but you do now get the character meet and greet, so I can see they probably have upped the price up a bit with that extra benefit. Was it worth it? Would we book it again? I would book this in a heartbeat. In fact, better than that, I would book a night at this hotel and then have breakfast at Ohana the following morning. 1, so I could finally meet Lilo and Stitch, because just dream character, and 2, this was absolutely one of my favourite meals of the entire holiday. Everything from the ambience to the food to the sounds to the just the sensation of being in this beautiful Hawaiian resort just absolutely was one of my favourite experiences of the entire holiday. It was so peaceful and relaxing. You were kind of away from all the hustle and bustle of the Disney parks. It was just so calm and tranquil, and I could have honestly stayed there all day. We were heading off to Epcot later, and there was a part of me thinking, shall we just stay here? Shall we just stay? So absolutely, I would book this again without a single thought. It was one of my favourite days, and something that I am incredibly glad that we did make the effort to go and do. Before we left actually to go to Epcot, we did decide to stick around the resort and just hang out for a bit. We checked out some of the merch shops, we brought another Stitch teddy, and we also tried our first ever Dole Whip from Pineapple Lanai. So it really was just this really lovely morning, just away from everything, and it just felt really special. And I just cannot recommend to you enough that if you do get a chance when you're on your Disney holiday to visit some of the resorts, take in some of the different atmospheres and the different theming, and try some of the different foods that are on offer out there, you won't regret it. Whether it's Ohana or whether it's a different one that's more to your taste, it's such a nice way to just expand your Disney experience beyond just the 4 main parks. So I hope you enjoyed our review of the Ohana restaurant at the Polynesian Resort. It was quite quick and sweet, but honestly this was just an all-round fantastic experience that I would recommend to anybody who is booking a Disney holiday. If you are enjoying these reviews, if you're finding them helpful, then please do give us a quick like on this video because we really do appreciate it. And if you've been to Ohana, please leave me a comment below. What did you think? Did you enjoy it? Did you get to meet Stitch? I am so jealous. And if you want to catch our next Disney dining review, where we're going to the amazing Be Our Guest restaurant in the Magic Kingdom, then don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you next time.